everyone! So today I'm going to be making a patchwork vest out of a handful of old but not really old turtlenecks that are just too small for me, so I don't wear them anymore. I thought I would recycle them and make something new that I would wear. So I'm just cutting out different shapes and I'm going to stitch them together to make one big piece of fabric, and then I'll use the template that I showed, which I've made out of paper, and use that to cut them out. So I'm just gonna cut out rectangles and other things out of each of the different turtlenecks. Here I've used a piece of card. I'm trying to make a few like angled diagonal lines across one side of my vest, so I needed to make sure that each of the angles would be the same, so I've done that using a piece of card. Here's me using the piece of card. At first it was quite difficult, it kept moving out of the way, so it wasn't very accurate, but it helped keep the kind of shape so it was similar. Here's what I have so far. These pencils didn't really work, but I found one that eventually made a mark, and this was a lot easier to cut it out rather than trying to follow a piece of paper that was moving around the whole time. A lovely shape. So that's the front. As you can see, the diagonal lines across one side. And I'm just lining up each of the edges and I'm going to pin them together and stitch them. Yeah, here's me pinning it together. I missed out most of it, but this is how I did most of them. I just pinned them and then, oh, bit of dirt there. And I used a stitch on my sewing machine, it's just called 17, I don't really know. It's some zigzag line, but I think it means that the fabric won't fray as much around the edges, because when you do more zigzag lines, pieces of woven fabric tend to unravel, but zigzag lines don't stop that from happening. They do stop that. And I'm just cutting off any excess bits so that it's one nice straight line, because I'm going to keep the edges together at the front, because that's the trend now. And I had a little hole because I cannot sew in a straight line. It's a bit wonky, and I missed out a whole bit, so I had to stitch it back together again. All done. And now I'm gonna do the back. I do the same. I had to measure it just to make sure it was long enough to go across my whole back, because you do not want that to be a bit small. No, no, no. So I'm gonna do one big strip along the bottom, and it's a bit wonky because I think the fabric's stretched a little bit, but I'll just sew it a little bit differently. I just kind of guessed all the measurements. I just cut out big squares of fabric so that I definitely had enough fabric to make the vest. And I'm just putting them all together to make sure it looks nice, that the colours go well together so it's not too bad. And it fits, yay! And I'm just doing the same as I did for the first time. Oh, nice transition, Deli. hey, and just sewing each of the edges. I just sewed 2 pieces of fabric together at a time, and then I put them together eventually. I slowly look more and more serious and get closer and closer to the sewing machine as I do it, but that's what concentration does. And I just repeat the whole time. I had to make sure I went back over each stitch, otherwise the string would just come out because, oh, there's no thread. You see there's 2 parts to the sewing machine and you have to have thread on both sides, and it did not. So that meant it wasn't even sewing. And here's me putting it back in. This takes quite a while. I have no idea how to do it, so I just kind of put the needle in and out. Oh, I've done it already. And I just keep sewing. And that's the next part done. So I actually had too much like way too much fabric, but I just measured out how big I wanted it to be and then created a nice straight, almost straight line. I'm not really measuring things. I don't think I even used a ruler except to make that paper template. And I'm just pinning it on to the fabric so that it stays in the same place and I can have the right shape so it's not all wonky and weirdly measured. I don't even know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Yeah, and then I just cut around it so it makes the right shape. I used another vest that I already have that fits me as a template, so I just hoped that it would work, really. I've never done anything like this before. I just thought it'd be fun. Thought they looked nice. I made most of this up. Actually, I think I made the whole thing up. They are surprisingly tough to cut through, and my scissors just kept sticking together, so oh, we're done, a little boogie. I had to draw lines on so that I could cut more fabric out, but I'd still get the right size and shape once I stitched it together, sewed it together. I had to use a sewing machine because, I mean, who wants to hand stitch that together? No one. And that's one side done. Yay. Oh, both sides done. So, yeah, it's starting to look more like a vest. I'm just pinning the pieces of fabric together so that they stay in the right place while I sew them together. And trying it on, make sure it falls in the right places, you know. My concentration base. I was quite scared to mess this up because I'd spent too long making this to mess it up. I mean, how badly could I mess it up? But still, I didn't want to ruin it. The last 2 bits. After 2 days of sewing, I would finally finish. I really was concentrating on this bit. I really didn't want to mess it up. And I just cut off all the extra bits so it didn't have flaps. We're done! And I'm modelling. Yes, I am standing on my bed, but my wall was a good background. So here's me awkwardly posing. I don't normally do it, but here's the back. I hope you like it. Thank you for watching.